twist and turn my mind until I don't know who I am. Mirror man.
Good evening and welcome to a new edition of the Arsenal Opinion Podcast. I'm joined by Tim Payton of the AST, one of my favourite guests, one of the most interesting men in the world of Arsenal. How you doing, Tim?
I'm very well. Pleased to be here.
Tim, I normally give you a little call when I see you blowing up the internet with truth bombs to people that dare tread on your toes when it comes to the world of football finances and Arsenal. You seem fired up at the moment, and you've got plenty to say about Arsenal's finances. But first, I just wanted to find out how you're doing.
I'm doing really well. I mean, it's a glow that comes from 22 years of waiting, I think. It sits there like a halo.
Did you go to the Champions League final?
I did. I was in Budapest. I was at Selhurst Park, and it was all wonderful. And it's just great to be back and sitting at the top of football again. There are always challenges, but it's nice to have people coming after you for once.
That is exactly it. Tim, you've been an Arsenal fan for a very long time. You saw the glory years of Arsene Wenger. You saw the Invincibles, and you were there. You became a very prominent voice through that era. Pointing at the finances and chiding Ivan Gazidis. Did you ever think that Arsenal would get back to the level that we're at the moment, particularly during some of the darker times between 2007 and 2014?
I think there was a period where there was real concern because there was an ownership structure that was in kind of Stasi, wasn't it? There are two big ownership groups facing off against each other. One had control but didn't really want to exercise it. They largely abdicated their responsibilities by handing over all governance to Arsene Wenger, and that didn't go very well in the final years, which is perhaps where we first got to talk a lot and know each other. And you do think, how do we break this cycle? Certain things, I'm sure over the next hour or so, we'll catch up with them. Certain things happened in the ownership, both structurally and with personnel involved. There's usually a magic person at the heart of it all, and that's Mikel Arteta now. And as much as I'll praise him, I'll say the club have got to be really careful of not ending up like they did with Arsene Wenger. Power corrupts, absolute power corrupts, absolutely, kind of thing. But at the moment, it's just wonderful to see the way football has kind of restructured in recent years. The amount of money that flows into the big clubs, the big five, the big six. If they just get it right with their manager and coach and sporting executive, I think it's easier to bounce back now because you're working with such big resources compared to the others. A Brighton or a Bournemouth or a Villa, it's much harder to sustain it. The big clubs really do have some financial ballast there. So I think we will probably see slightly more yo-yoing, or what's the right phrase, seesawing of the big clubs amongst each other. And you've got to hope that when your turn in the sun comes, you maximise it. So let's hope that Arsenal do this for 5 years, not 5 months.
Before we get into the meat of the podcast, Tim, could you explain a little bit about the AST? We've got a global audience here, and not everybody is always familiar with the various bodies that work around Arsenal, and give people a little bit of insight into what your day-to-day role is.
Yeah, the Arsenal Supporters Trust is the largest, the main supporters group at Arsenal. We work on the one member, one vote idea. We're a registered mutual society, so we have to file accounts and minutes and have an AGM with the Financial Conduct Agency. So we meet certain standards of governance. And really, I've sort of, being a little bit of a marketing guy like you, I put it in the strap line. We're about custodianship, influence and representation. That's what we want to do. On behalf of Arsenal fans, we will fight for custodianship. So we will fight on ticket prices. We'll fight for access for fans. We'll fight on, the train companies and being given enough tickets in the games in Europe. And we'll particularly fight against proposals for Super Leagues or to move Arsenal games away from the Emirates. Not on the agenda at the moment, but have been. And we want to represent everyone to have influence. So something, what I enjoyed most at the game on Friday night? I enjoyed seeing 7,000 Arsenal fans able to stand with a proper safe standing section. They were standing in there before, I know that, but to have it, so you've got the comfortable bar, to have it kind
7,000 was it?
Yeah, it's 7,000. I think 3,000 of those may have been for the opposition fans, because you have to go right across the away end. And next year in the North Bank, they'll catch up and do that end as well. So it will be 14,000 altogether. Now, that took more than 10 years at Arsenal. First of all, we had to persuade the government to change the law. Then we had to work on the regulations. Then we had to work with the FSA on the national rollout. And we chipped away at the Arsenal Advisory Board. We chipped away at meetings. And I must say that Rich Garlick, the current chief executive, he got it straight away. Right. I think you always position what you want to do around the most important person at Arsenal, which is Mikel Arteta. So we reminded the club that, he's all about spectator and the togetherness and creating a link to fans. And if fans are given the accommodation they want and able to stand, it will be a better atmosphere. And it all fitted in together. There was also an issue they had with the away games in cup competitions and so on, and it fell into place. But for years, that felt like banging a head against a brick wall. But you know me, I don't give up. I fight and I fight and I fight, as does the AST. And that was really nice to be able to deliver that. That was where we used some influence and representation to deliver custodianship at the Emirates, legal standing for the first time in more than 25 years at the club.
I remember speaking to you about this for years, and you said that particularly when it came to the law, there wasn't much evidence to suggest that standing is any more dangerous than sitting in a stadium. But because of some of the big issues that we'd had in England over the years, there was this political unease about changing the law because of ingrained beliefs in society about what standing meant in the stadium. How did you get around that?
Well, ultimately, that was got around by the government themselves. There was a very good sports minister called Tracy Crouch who agreed to do a review and went back to the basic principles, looking at the evidence. Now, the evidence, actually, safe standing areas are safer than seated areas now. Now,
really?
Of course, this isn't the old North Bank, is it, where you had people really packed in and gaps. This is standing at your seat. Yeah, one of the reasons it's safer is there's a rail, so people tend not to plunge forward. It's called limbs, but people tend to stay in their position a bit more. So, you don't get the broken legs or the broken noses and the injuries there. It makes it easier to steward, and people kind of, they're not up and down all the time. So it just creates a slightly safer environment. So it was going back to the evidence, showing that it was what fans wanted, and at Arsenal, one of the things we had to do was show that where it was introduced at Spurs, at Wembley, at Manchester United and so on, but it hadn't led to any problems. And if anything, it had led to a better situation, because what you hope will happen over a couple of years at Arsenal is a few people who don't want to be in standing areas can graduate to seated areas, and those that want to be in the standing area can go where they want to be. And it's not just about safety; it's about customer satisfaction and people getting what they want coming into the ground.
And my final question on safe standing. My thing with safe standing is the Premier League is very expensive, and jobs amongst the young. Difficult to come by. Going to Arsenal, if you are young, is excruciatingly expensive. The whole process, traveling down, eating, getting a drink. Do you think Arsenal will do anything to use safe standing as a gateway in for younger fans to sort of build their own connections, and then when they, get to a certain age and they don't want to stand anymore, they can graduate out? I'm not trying to be ageist here, Tim, but I do like the idea of more young people at Arsenal. On your agenda.
More young people is so important, and actually it's already there. And this is credit to Vinay, who's now left as chief exec, and Rich Garlick carries it forward. That a couple of years ago, our campaign for a young adult price was introduced. So there are now, you might not know this, Pedro, because you're getting on a bit, but there are now reduced ticket prices for anyone up to 25, and there are a lot more junior gunner prices, because again, custodianship matters. But when you talk to the club, you have to put it in language that they'll understand. So you'll say, we've got to keep the young fans coming in if the club wants a future. We've got to keep the young fans coming in if we want a good atmosphere. I'm not going to claim that I'm as loud as I was when I was 16 years old, going to Highbury. You get a bit quieter when you get older. You definitely do. But we keep pushing for that. But Arsenal now, with the junior gunner offering, with the young adult offering, and with the extra. It's not enough. It started at 1,000. We'll get it to more. The community tickets that are given away free to to the locals that wouldn't afford them. Things are happening. We need to keep an eye on that. We also need to keep an eye on the general ticket price. We might come on to this because if something worries me, and it's where I spoke out last year, it's that we've got more Americans on our board now, and I love Americans, Pedro, and they can be great people, but they seem to have
I work for them.
You work for them, you live amongst them, but they seem to have a tolerance for ticket prices that would shock everyone at the Emirates. And we've got to remind them that one of the things that makes English football special is the sense that the ordinary man, the ordinary woman, and their family can go along and watch a game.
Yeah, and I think the thing that always impresses me with the AST, it's the wins. A lot of people pick holes in some of the things that you do. They're like, you need to talk about fan boycotts, and you need to bang the table, and you need to go on YouTube, and you need to get angry. But you have top tier relationships with people at the club. It's an open dialogue. You win some, you lose some, but I feel like you get some pretty big wins over the course of a season.
No, we do. We've had it. But it takes two to tango, and I must give credit to the Arsenal executive in recent years. Kate Lawrence chairs the advisory board, Rich Garlick, Tom McCann, who runs the venue, Juliet. They have been listening. So another thing that is making a bit of a difference, and we want to grow, is you can now buy a 19-game season ticket. Now, I pushed that really hard, partly so that some people had the choice of only paying for 19 games, not 26. Mm-hmm. But what I really wanted was those extra 6 or 7 games for more tickets to become available and open up for the red sale. Because if there is a crisis at Arsenal at the moment, it is the hundreds of thousands that want to get in and watch this fantastic team and can't do it. So we can talk about ticket prices, but we've also got to talk about a ticket being available at all and not through a tout. And that's what the 19-game season ticket. But we can only do things like that if people on the other side of the table, in the boardroom, in the executive, are listening, and they have listened better than in the 30 years that I've known the club.
I remember 2013, 2014, you couldn't give away your season ticket for the game. Not people about not for me, not for me. And now people are struggling to get in. It's absolutely crazy, but I guess they're the best sort of problems to have. Listen, Tim, enough gassing. Let's get into
hottest of takes.
Hottest of takes.
Three hottest of takes.
The AOP hottest of takes. Make it spicy.
Tim, where are you going to go with this week's hottest of takes? You there?
I am here. My hottest take is, if you listened carefully to the interviews with Arteta and Odegaard, they really want the Champions League this year. And I think they want it more than the Premier League. Now, I think the team is good enough. And last year, they're only, 2 penalty kicks away from delivering on that. And I think that they're more than capable. It's more likely this year than last year. But if push comes to shove, watch for them throwing everything at the Champions League. And I'll also nail my colours here. And I have the advantage of being an old codger and having seen several title wins. But if you said to me you can only have one, Tim, no-brainer answer, the Champions League. It is ridiculous that a club the size of Arsenal does not even have one bat star on its badge. We are by miles now the biggest club on any metric in Europe. Size of stadium, size of fan base, domestic history, custodians, all of it. We are by far the largest that doesn't have that Champions League. And you're not genuinely top tier until you've got it. So that's what I want.
Love it. All in on the Champions League.
Is that a hot take?
That is a hot take. That is a hot take. Yeah. I think some of the additions that Arteta has added will help in the Champions League as well. It's all about rotation and being fresh heading into that game, because PSG, they relax from February to May so they can prepare for it, and we don't.
They have an advantage that they have an easier domestic season as well. So, which means they're not quite as exhausted. What we have to hope, and I think we could be at that peak moment, is that Arsenal's squad depth, squad talent, and know-how means that they really can do it. And would you rather? Here's a sort of subsection 2A of the hot take.
Mm-hmm.
Would you rather win the title by 2 points because you've had a thrilling March, April, and May, but it's also been terrifying and you've lost more hair, or would you rather win it by 20 points and just cruise in and sit there and eat your popcorn and wonder what you're doing in mid-April? I'd quite like the 20-point win, partly so that they could really focus on the Champions League.
Don't let anybody ever convince you that Premier League title run last year was fun.
No, it wasn't fun at all, was it? It's only fun when it ends.
I didn't enjoy anything until we got to the end. It was not fun. It was not fun. And I thought I would look back on it and say, what a great time we had. I didn't enjoy any of last season. One of the worst seasons of all time.
No, but what it does do is it gives you that. It probably does give you the intensity though of that final week.
Yes.
Which if you comfortably win it, there isn't quite that moment of intensity, but there is a very quiet, ongoing satisfaction and relaxation that is very nice as well.
We deserve a cruise Premier League title win. We deserve.
Okay, let's do that then. That's what we're
going.
Let's cruise to the Premier League and win the Champions League in Madrid on June the 3rd. And I know that date because I've already booked the flights and hotels, being boringly organised.
Oh, really? Bold. I like it. I like it, Tim. All right, let's get on to the first big topic of conversation. Let's talk about boardroom and finance strategy. So we're just going to sort of take people through a bit of a journey of where Arsenal are. Last summer was crazy. It was absolutely crazy. It was Andrea Berta's first summer, and Arsenal lost their minds. We signed players that kind of lived in a different demographic. 26 to 30-year-olds were back on the agenda. We unleashed financial fury and we fattened out the squad. And there was a choice at the start of the summer. Do you go hard on quality or do you go hard on depth? And we went hard on depth and it got us over the line. So from a footballing perspective, that was the correct strategy. But come September, Tim Lewis was out and Arsenal added 4 people to the board. 3 people that lived in the world of finance, Ben Winston, who lived in the world of media. Tim, I wrote about this at the start of the summer and said that I thought the world of financial controls were coming to Arsenal. Then we went in for Vinny Jr. and then I looked a bit stupid, but we're back. We're back on it. You came out of the traps. Can you talk me through Arsenal's approach? Because sustainability has been a big topic of conversation over the last 15 years, but we don't seem to be living in that world anymore. What has been happening at Arsenal off the pitch?
Well, Arsenal's mission statement, Arsenal's objective is to be a self-sustainable football club. Right. And you still get told that by board members and in advisory board meetings and where the club wants to be. But if that is their objective, they're failing. Now, we're probably very happy that they're failing at the moment because in failing, it's giving a squad to win. But they are losing money every year and they are only keeping going. It's not huge, but they are only keeping the cash flow going by the owners putting some more money in each year. Now, I should qualify that. They're not putting money in what's called an equity injection, not putting money in for shares. It's probably coming from Deutsche Bank, but it is being loaned on at incredibly favourable interest rates, very, very modest interest rates. And it's not in any way putting the club at risk. Many people will call it soft financing. But that is what is happening. And it is not the club's objective to be there. It could be a slightly sad commentary on modern football, European-wide and Premier League-wide, that a club like Arsenal, with unbelievable resources and resources that many clubs would dream of, being London fan-based, meaning the ticket prices you can ask, but the history of the brand, meaning the commercial value, they still can't get past the finish line without going into debt, without spending more than they're earning. The reason that I have commented, as I have when you see people say, just keep spending, just keep spending, just keep spending, is I don't think that will carry on forever. Certainly, it's not what the vice chair and it's not what, or the joint chair, and it's not what the chief exec say they want to be. And if you look at Arsenal's balance sheet, you can see where the problem is. The problem isn't so much the spending. The problem is the selling. Is bringing in a little bit more for players. And if you don't sell very well, That's a lot of money that doesn't go on the bottom line. And it explains why Arsenal made a loss of, 52 million 3 years ago, 28 million a couple of years ago, and even a million kind of last year, which was a year when they did have a few sales. When they sold, I think it was Nketiah and Smith Rowe, one or two others. They brought in about 80 million. Even then, and this year, the extraordinary thing, the season we've just seen, you really would think it can't get any better for Arsenal. Win the Premier League, go all the way to a final of a Champions League. It's slightly harder to read at the moment because so much money is coming in. But they have probably lost 50 to 75 million pounds this year. And why have they lost it? Partly because of what you just said. If you bring in all those players, do you think those players play for buttons, Pedro, or do you think they want big wages?
They want big cash.
And what do you think happens when they win trophies? Do they want bonuses or do they want plaudits?
I wouldn't give them bonuses.
They get
is your bonus. Joy is your bonus.
Oh, well, I'm afraid to say that they want very big bonuses. Where Arsenal will be slightly better off is by not winning the Champions League.
By not winning the Champions League?
Well, if they'd have won the Champions League, the extra money would have been outrun by the extra bonuses. There's a bit of a joke in football, that the best spot is runners up. And there's a little bit of truth in it. Because if you win, you have all the costs of kind of servicing the parades and attending the finals, and then the players all want their cut as well. But what it means is, people, how often do I see, but we're earning 800 million now. Yeah, I see that all the time. How often do you see that?
I keep on running that story. Record revenues.
Record revenues. What I never see is, but we're spending more than 400 million on wages now, which is where it will have gone. What people never factor in to their kind of computing what's happening to the wage bill, they never factor in. Did you see the story last year that Saliba got a new contract?
Yes.
Pay rise. Did you see that story that Gabriel got a new contract? Yes. Pay rise. Did you see the story that Saka? Great news. Everyone was celebrating. What no one does is add the extra £15 million a year on top of what he's already getting paid to the wage bill. Then those 7 or 8 players that were brought in that you talked about last summer, they all come in and they want at least what the sort of upper median tier are earning. So you've suddenly got a wage bill going past 400 million.
Is that where you think we'll land this year? Because we were 359. Was loosely where we landed the season before.
Yeah, I think we're coming around about 400 because of the bonuses and because of the extra contracts.
And that's where Liverpool loosely are, right?
Then without, and actually there's a truism there, isn't there? That's kind of like that, we used to look at Arsenal's wage bill and go, wow, how are Arsenal doing it when they were coming fourth and Liverpool or City were coming first? Well, part of the reason they were doing it was not paying bonuses and not having enough good players that could mean you come first. If you want a squad that can come first, you're going to be paying for it. Yeah. It's kind of like, it's almost scary how you can correlate the wage bill with performance. If anything, Arsenal are still slightly overperforming their wage bill, but that 400 million is catching up fast. Then, and I won't go into the details because others do it better, but you've got the amortization, which is a write-off of the squad. Now, Simon and Nigel, who helped me write those excellent AST financial reports, they said they did something they never thought they'd do this year, was write about the 1 billion squad value. But that is where Arsenal have got to with the spending. But if you have a 1 billion squad value, you have an amortization fee. That's the write-off of that squad of about 200 million a year. Then you have the other costs which are going up. And suddenly you see that the cost line is going higher than the income line. How do you normally plug that gap? Sales. Now I'm going to really test your memory here. Who did Arsenal sell in the last year?
Who did Arsenal sell in the last year?
Yeah.
For a good fee.
Yeah. In the last financial year. So we're really looking at the last summer transfer window, not the current one.
I can't even remember who we got rid of last summer.
Lokonga and Tavares.
7 million and what?
Yeah.
What was Lokonga? 15 million?
I think so. So you're kind of talking about 20 million come in. You would have needed 80, 90 million to come in to break even. And look at all those players coming in. Some contracts were cancelled. You had people like Sterling and Neto's loan ended. Zinchenko, Vieira and Kirill didn't go anywhere, if you recall. Now they've managed to move them a little bit now. But people forget all of this because they only ever look at the incomings. And that's why I was insistent a couple of weeks ago when I dipped my toe back into this debate, and I thought you saw it, that sales had to come. Now, almost certainly the way that Arsenal are going to get the big sale to go alongside the 40-odd million already raised through Norgard, Trossard, Kyrgios and Hein is Martinelli, and I think he's had to sit down and we're talking to now, hasn't he? Which is, if you don't take one of these offers, you ain't going to play any football this year. And, I'm sure a deal is going to go through there before the transfer window. And if it doesn't, they'll have to select another big squad name and maybe an academy player, because I am convinced that they want to get that sales figure this year up to about 100 million, because that 100 million in sales, the way accounts work in simple terms, is that offsets the loss.
Talk to me about the makeup of the board.
Well, the board has changed. The real big departure was Tim Lewis, who used to run that place. And Mikel Arteta was very smart and realised that he was the direct contact to Stan and Josh. He'd known them for a long time. He'd been their lawyer. He'd been around. Very abrasive character, very difficult character. I give him some praise for, I think he sorted out Arsenal's boardroom and some of its senior executive team. I thought he did very well. He caused chaos in football governance circles. He was certainly the leader at Arsenal with the call for the Super League. Wasn't always particularly fan-friendly in his opinions. And I do think that, I'll say it now, I think he did good things, but I think Arsenal is a better football club, a happier football club without him there. I also think that he used to act like he was the chairman and he owned the club, although he didn't. And I think there was some assertion of position by Josh Kroenke, who is to all extent and purposes the owner of Arsenal now. He's the one that turns up to training. He's the one that comes to matches. He's the one that the deal last summer that really broke all the rules was the Eze deal. Do you remember it went through late? And expensive. Also, not the profile. Are you going to be able to sell him easily? No. Are you going to be able to sell him at all with the wage that he's on? But it was a here and now signing. Mikel always wants more players. Of course he does, because he's judged as the manager. He's always pushing. But I think that deal was pushed through with Josh's support when Havertz went down with the injury. It wouldn't have happened without the long-term injury to Havertz, I don't believe, because it so broke the rules and making the club, in effect, run on the unsustainability. But I do think that I would say that of the Kroenke family, I think with Josh, it's about the heart, and with Stan, it's probably a little bit more about the head and the wallet. And I think the boardroom repositioning, you'll see a medium-term approach to try and get a bit stronger on the finances. I also think that Arsenal have got, although the options are narrower than many think, and I think they're learning this now, a huge call on what to do with the stadium. But the stadium is getting a bit tired in terms of its setup. It's getting tired. You look at what they've done at the Bernabeu. You look at what's coming at the new camp.
Or SoFi. SoFi is incredible.
You look at the SoFi. You look up the road. Now, we're lucky that they can't play football for toffee, because you look at the Spurs stadium and it's much better than the Arsenal stadium, and it's going to earn them a lot more money over the coming years, partly because it's so great at holding Beyonce concerts and NFL matches. It's a partnership stadium as much as a football stadium, but that will really work for them. Old Trafford is going to be rebuilt. There are other plans coming. Everton Stadium is great. And Arsenal have looked at the competitive mix and thought, what can we do with the Emirates? They also have, 100,000 on the waiting list, a red membership that can't get in. And if you look across, particularly Otto Marley and Dave Steiner, you've got people that are real estate people and stadium people. And I think together with Populous, the stadium architects, they've been kicking the tires and looking at every option of what you can do.
They want to take the roof off, right? They can take the roof off. That's one of the things they're exploring.
I don't think that's being explored in that much serious when you get into it. You can take the roof off, but if you take the roof off, you're almost rebuilding. You're up at £1 billion. You
might as well drop the whole thing and start
you might as well bring in the bulldozers and start again. The extent of work and the difficulty of doing it in that site, and the difficulty of getting up to 80, 90,000 within, you've walked those streets to Drayton Park, to Arsenal Tube Station. I think it's incredibly difficult. And you also have to ask, do those extra 20,000 seats, what's the rate of return on them set against the extra expenditure? You also have the fact that would take time. Mikel would be off because he's not going to play for 2 years at Wembley, is he? where when he can pick Barcelona or Real Madrid next time they need a manager. So it's a much more difficult call. But that's what I believe the expertise was partly brought in for, because your board is meant to be the strategic oversight of the big decisions facing you, and what to do about the stadium is one of Arsenal's big decisions.
Do you have any concerns about increasing capacity based on where we are right now? Because
no,
last time we were champions, we moved into a new stadium, and squad controls came into play. We couldn't compete with Chelsea, and I still think we sold a lot of seats, but attendance certainly dipped. And like I said, it's not a joke. You could not give away.
I remember, and if Arsenal spent 3 years in the Europa League, they'd have a challenge on. But I do think the club has grown again. I do think that if you could come up with another 10, 15,000 season tickets, they'd sell like that. The other thing that they've got, Pedro, is no matter how bad it gets, who is ever going to let a season ticket go again? It's a bit like a New York taxi license, isn't it? You hang on to it in the bad years because you just know that you'll never get another one. So I think that the London market and Arsenal becoming an even bigger proposition, I don't think there's any problem that you could add 20,000 on and filling it. I think the problem is, can you do it in a sensible way that is affordable? And one of the things I think that surprises people, and I think that perhaps one of the battles, if I had to predict the battle that I've got possibly most with Arsenal over the next 3 to 5 years, it's that as they do add a few more seats in, or they convert what they've got, they try and remove general admission and turn it into corporate and hospitality, which other clubs have done. Do you vaguely remember that story about the 86-year-old season ticket holder at Manchester United who was turfed out so they could create a kind of another prawn sandwich lounge? It's, Chelsea have done it. Arsenal have done it a little bit this year. They've introduced about 30 incredibly exclusive seats sitting just behind the dugout. I think you pay £3,000 a game and walk on the pitch before the game. But they've actually done that by removing the youth team players and the academy players and putting them further away. It was that little kind of enclave behind the bench. But what we have to watch, it would be great to get a few more seats into the Emirates. You can possibly do it by taking out boxes and making them more like lounge areas. You can possibly do it by making the seats slightly smaller in the lower bowl and making it more standing there and keeping it general admission. But my fight isn't just capacity, it's making sure that the general admission at an affordable price remains for the custodianship for all the Arsenal fans who've been watching the club and want to carry on watching the club.
Because there does have to be a balance, though, doesn't it, Tim? Because these premium seats add to our...
and there are 9,000 of them at the Emirates, and that's 15% of the stadium, and they bring in about 45% of the revenue now.
What do you think what percent would they try and bump that in a new build, do you think?
Well, I think if they found a way, and I don't think this is feasible, but people have talked about filling in the corners. Let's just hypothetically imagine they could fill in the corners with 5,000 to 10,000 seats. I think 75% of those seats would be corporate, because it's only how you pay for the incredible building costs that would come with expanding it. And even then, I'm not sure it gives you a rate of return. So I expect what we're going to see at the Emirates, and I might be wrong on this, but usually get it right and read the tea leaves correctly, is I think that what faces the pitch will stay largely the same, but what's behind in the stands, I think you're going to see more restaurants, more lounges, more sort of exclusive sort of offerings linked to a seat that gives you a view of the tunnel or visit to the press room after the match. I think you're going to see the ever corporatization of the club level and possibly expanding into the general admission levels.
It's the Americanization of sport in England, and Spurs have done it, and Man United will do it with.
And again, some things can be done appropriately. I sit in a nice seat, but in general admission. The way the Emirates is divided up at the moment, we can't get into the nice restaurants which are at the middle level. So we basically have to go and buy not very good quality fast food from the kiosks. See if that improves, because a new catering company has come in. You may know them, Legends. I think they're much bigger in the States, and the Kroenke family have some involvement in them. Coming to Arsenal this year, but all I can kind of do is go and buy the fries or the pizza or and the beer offering, I might occasionally like to take my dad or a friend who comes with me into somewhere where we spend £50 a head on a nice meal, but I can't do it. Now, if Arsenal can provide that facility round the back without changing my seat access, why not? At Spurs, they're earning over £1 million net, in effect, profit per game off the catering. And they've got it all in-house, so it's making a huge contribution to the bottom line. Now, Arsenal moving Delaware North on, I think, means that they'll make a greater contribution of it. So I'm not against improving the offering, making it better, but please do it in a way that doesn't, A, take my seat off me, or B, try and double the price of my seat.
There is no excuse in that little enclave in London not to have world-class stadium food. Like, there really isn't. And because then you would encourage people to come down earlier. There's no reason to get down to that stadium earlier. I've been lucky to have been invited into the Diamond Club once or twice, and also to have used the club level. And I think the catering in there is very good. The catering in there is very good. It's only in the general admission area where it's not good enough. Yeah. Do you think there's any chance that they'll do anything with the sort of outside area? As you walk down the stairs from Arsenal Stadium. I think Arsenal Station.
Exactly. I mean, they've not got a lot of space there, but I think what they do own that site. They own the site on the other side of the roundabout. But at one point, they got planning permission to build a student block. I think it goes back to Ken Fryer. I think the first planning application they put in, the block was so high that you'd have been able to see the pitch from the block.
Really? Put a ticket price on it.
And the council said no. But they do own that block, and maybe there's even the option of, do you do more hospitality like 200 yards away and then walk people in? I'm sure they're looking at every option, but it's not huge, that concourse. But look, there's not a lot of room to kind of go back with the stands.
Okay. Yeah, that's very interesting. Tim, I want to take us back to the playing side of things and more on the sporting side. Arsenal just won the Premier League. There should be a Premier League premium, a Champions premium on our players. Yet here we are. Martinelli has not been sold, and our only major sale of the summer so far appears to be Norgard. And we've done a little house flip on. We've got 2 million extra. Why can't Arsenal sell players? How can Oxlade-Chamberlain from 2017 still be our record sale? What's going on here?
Well, partly it's the manager and its choice, because there are players that could be sold for a lot of money. But imagine the outrage. They talk about selling an academy player, which has become a standard modus operandi at most of the big clubs now, partly to contribute to the bottom line and regulation. But imagine, you see about Nwaneri being sold, you see about Lewis Skelly being sold, and they're marching on the Emirates, aren't they?
We don't like it.
They don't like it, and partly it's maybe getting used to it, or accepting that, if you want the 25-man squad with the strength and depth that it has, that maybe you have to make a call like that. I also think that Arsenal have been over generous. I'm talking about a decade here, but it's still working its way through, of giving. This goes back. I'm still allowed the odd little dig, aren't I? But I must point out he was wonderful as well. This goes back to Arsene Wenger giving wages and contracts that were too high to the players' worth. I think he went back to the kind of almost kindly, scholarly approach that if I give you a big wage, you're going to be so happy, you're going to play really well for me. Well, welcome to the modern footballer, Arsenal.
Nick Bender with a 52 on his back for the 52,000 a week.
Oh, yeah, I could name several Arsenal players that played much better in the year of contract renewal than once contract was given. No names, Theo Walcott. But anyway, I think that it's difficult to move players on. Arsenal have had to cancel the contract. You could probably get to 10 contracts that have been cancelled over the last 5 years, including some very big names. Now, I do think that they're getting a little bit better. I mean, you were dismissive of this year, but we've already got to about 45 million, which if they can throw alongside that a big sale, and I think I covered already, I think that the stars are pointing to that big sale being Martinelli, somewhere between 45 and 60 million. They bring in 100 million this year, and that's fine. That keeps everything ticking over. That probably means that Arsenal are about break even for the year, and you go again. But I think Arsenal fans have to accept that if they want the £250 million spent in the transfer market every summer, they have to expect 50 to 100 million to be sold. And if you don't want 250 million spent, lower your expectations to 100 to 150 million and everyone can stay. But you cannot have cake and eat it forever.
Okay, Tim, this is where I do a takedown. I've been softballing you this whole podcast. Everybody, I can hear the audience yelling at me. Just say it. Just say it. Okay, Tim, if we're being so clever with our finances and we're trying to get back to the mission statement of sustainable football, how did we engage in the Vinny Jr. deal? 400 grand a week in wages minimum, 150 million euro transfer fee. Answer me that. Answer me that.
Well, first of all, no one knows if those were exactly the figures that he was going to be paid. But as I think I talked through with the amortization and with the wages, it's dealt with if you deal with sales. There would have been a factor of a Vinny Jr. coming in where it would have pushed commerciality even higher and brought in some more money, although that's almost maxed out. But what you would have seen if he would have come in is you would have seen, at least one of the academy players I've mentioned being sold, and you would have seen Martinelli being sold, and it would cover it. Because what you've got to think is that if you bring in a player on 150 million, that's another 25 million-ish going on the amortization. How do you find 25 million this year? You sell Namweri.
Okay.
Yeah. So it would have been covered by more sales.
Would have been covered by more sales. And this
I also wonder how much Arsenal really got into the details of the spreadsheets and how much they were having one of those punts where if it would have come off, great, and they just scrambled on what to do next. But it was such an opportunity that they thought, why not? I don't think that ever got into the realms of really likely to happen.
It felt quite a weird signing as well. Arteta, all about control, all about off the ball movement, all about relentless workhorses. Julian Alvarez is unbelievable off the ball. He works like a championship player. But Vinny Jr. doesn't defend. He doesn't track. And Arteta was going to accept that with a 26-year-old. You can't change at 26.
Doesn't surprise me. Put it this way. Doesn't surprise me, but it didn't happen.
Yeah. I know, and the rumours certainly worked for Arsenal after the loss of Morgan Rogers. Another thing that I wanted to mention: there's been a lot of complaining in the fan base about the transfer window that we've had so far. Some of it about racking up on players that are 28 years old plus. This is new. This is very Andrea Berta. He left a very old squad at Atletico Madrid, but Arteta is always going to want players that are ready in the now. You saw in the Man City documentary that they said Arsenal are signing older players to win now. Two questions I've got on this front. Do you think do you have any worries about Arsenal signing 28-year-old players for record fees?
Yes, but at the back of my mind, I do think, oh my God, what happens in 2-3 years' time? Mikel's done fantastic, but he takes that offer to go home, to Barcelona, and he leaves behind 5 or 6 30-year-olds on 250, 300k a week who've seen better days, and it's just really tough. And I do worry about that, and I do think some of the signings don't fit the model. It's not press the panic button to me, because there is a great mix of some youngsters coming through. It's a super squad. I also think in football you do have to live in the here and now a little bit, don't you? I mean, it's all about the next game. There's a certain extent. I mean, who gives a shit what happens in 3 years' time if we've had 2 more titles and a Champions League trophy on the way? Then take a couple of years of rebalancing from that. But there's no doubt that some of the decisions that have been taken at the moment are more short-term than Arsenal have been doing for a while, and aren't necessarily the soundest financial decisions. And I think they're driven by the manager having incredible power and influence at the moment to get what he wants.
Second part of that question, then we'll get back to the power bit. 200 million net so far is the third highest spend in the Premier League.
We spent really high. People that talk about having a small
money,
transfer
right?
window.
We can't really be complaining about how much we spent.
It's really high. I actually make it 225 million. It's over 200 million. Just don't forget, because of the way they structured things, that Nkapé is a £50 million signing this year.
Oh, of course, I forget about Nkapé, yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
Just forget about 50 million. Nice one, Pedro. Now I can see
forget.
why you're not in accounts.
Yeah, those loans to buys, they bite you. They bite you. Okay, let's talk about the power dynamics as well, because me and you met through one of the craziest power dynamics in football when Arsenal just said, "Hey, here's the keys to the kingdom, Arsene Wenger, go run everything." Arsenal love to anoint a king. We love it. George Graham, king. Arsene Wenger, king. Mikel Arteta is picking his own sporting directors, and he is running the show at the moment after one Premier League title win. Some would say he deserves that. Tim, what are the watch outs when you do things like this?
Oh, you've got to watch so carefully, and you need governance around it. Of course, you empower your key man because you don't want him to leave, and he's done so much good work and clearly has just an amazing attitude and approach to winning, and the ethos is great. But you have to have checks and balances, and also think a little bit. I mean, I think they've been lucky, Pedro. Would we have signed Rice if they'd got Caicedo from Brighton, who they wanted? We wouldn't have had Trossard and what he'd offered, or other big signings if they'd have got Mudryk. Remember, they wanted Mudryk from, and they only got outbid for him from Chelsea because Chelsea were prepared to pay the agent more. Now, if they'd have spent 180 million on those two players, I'm not sure we'd be celebrating like we are now. Yeah. You need checks and balances around the manager. And first of all, you need someone saying, are we going to sign this player? Do we spend this much money? And the second check that you need is, like you say, it is not right that Mikel Arteta has sole choice of who the sporting director is. Now, I don't think he did, from what I've heard in the boardroom. I think they wanted someone different from Edu. I think they wanted a more agent approach. And I think it was a more mix of opinion going into that. But certainly, if I had to sort of have an amber light on a governance issue at the moment, it would be about the sort of king is dead, long live the king. Are we spreading the talent enough? And are there checks and balances on Mikel Arteta? Because even at his greatest, everyone needs a check and balance. And of course, where did it go wrong for Arsene Wenger? It went wrong when his check and balance was no longer there, who was David Dean.
Do you not think anybody at board level or, Richard Garlick could be more of a balance on power?
I hope so. I hope so. But at the moment, I spent more time with Josh Kroenke, who I like, who has got much more of a sense of commitment to the club, this passion to win, very good people person. But I get the feeling at the moment that Mikel calls for shots in that relationship. And Mikel is the one who really drives things. That's probably as it should be. But who is the person that says, no, we can't sign that player, or no, that is not good value, or actually, are you doing the right thing with your senior staff here? Have you got enough mix of challenge and support? And I don't know at the moment. I do have a lot of time for Rich Garlick, who I've got to know a little bit, is a football man, a football fan, come up supporting Sheffield Wednesday, worked at West Brom, been in the Premier League, knows the game really well. So I do trust his judgment, but I would be very surprised if he's really able to have much authority over Mikel Arteta at the moment.
Okay, let's talk. I mean, we've bounced around all of the subjects that we wanted to, but I wanted to get back onto the Premier League more broadly. It seems like we're moving into a post-rules kind of Premier League. And what I mean by that is that it seems like the Premier League clubs all agree these rules and they leave all of these gaping holes in them. And we're living in a world now where market rate is only market rate until you get out of the transfer window and see everything that kind of happened. I'm thinking about the Morgan Rogers transfer fee, which was 117 million. And then you get towards the end of the transfer window and you see that Garnacho is taken out of that for an inflated fee. I'm thinking about the way Manchester City and Spurs are doing deals at the moment with Marmoush and Savinho. Savinho being touted as an £85 million player, despite only having 2 goals in 52 games. Why are Premier League clubs so kind of loose on things like this? Shouldn't the rules be protecting the fairness for everybody? It seems like most clubs are just like, I've got my buddies that I do deals with and this is the way that I work, and Arsenal don't seem to have any friends in that respect, apart from Chelsea, where we have a very one-way relationship.
I don't know about the Arsenal-Chelsea relationship. I mean, as long as there has been football, there have been clubs breaking rules, twisting rules. I don't need to take you back to interesting decisions taken around Arsenal's league status in 1913. I don't need to take you back to a previous Arsenal manager and dealings on transfers.
No.
Who wasn't there? Yeah, there always will be. But I often think that I won't name the player, but I think it's actually I will because it's so long ago, but it's harmless. Perhaps the best bung that Arsenal ever paid was a washing machine. And back in about 19, I'm trying to think when it would be. Back in about 1980, Arsenal gave Michael Thomas's mum a washing machine to get him to switch from Chelsea youth or academy to Arsenal academy. He went on to score the most important goal in Arsenal's history.
Seems like a very twee bung, doesn't it?
It does now. There was a Mexican player who signed for Arsenal, and people were like, "How did that get around the regulations?" And it turned out that Mexican player's father, it just by coincidence, his house had blown away in a hurricane or something, and he pitched up working at the Arsenal training ground. Therefore, it wasn't an international transfer, but it was a transfer of a boy that was just living up the road from the training ground. So football clubs have been doing deals and arrangements all the time, but just add noughts onto the end. In a way, they're the unintended consequence of having rules in the first place. Now, I actually think I know a lot of people don't have sympathy. I have quite a lot of sympathy with Aston Villa and to a sense Newcastle at the moment, because they are paying the price of Manchester City pushing it so far that you had to bring some rules in. There was a period when I thought it was fine that Manchester City were investing. Why should Old Trafford up the road have always had the most money and being able to spend the most? And, if no one was allowed to invest or spend more, you'd have a closed shop and the same team's winning. But City just pushed it to ridiculousness beyond ridiculousness. And I think something had to be done. But the problem in something having to be done is it appears that it was Nottingham Forest and Everton who got points taken off them, not Manchester City. So there are forever problems in the competitive balance, in how the rules are being run. What you have to hope is that I think it's a little bit like the debate between tax avoidance and tax evadance. We just have to hope that our club is very, very good at avoidance and playing the rules and the games and the systems, but that they never cheat or break the laws themselves, because that's not right for the integrity of the game or the custodianship of Arsenal Football Club.
Lovely. All right, I've got two questions to finish out the podcast, Tim. First question, what is the biggest watch out for Arsenal, the biggest threat to Arsenal over the next 5 years?
The biggest first threat is losing Mikel Arteta too quickly. So for all that I've said there, he is an incredibly key man, and we can almost all see the turnaround there. So that's the first watch out. The second watch out is not to get too big for their boots. And also, they must recognise that one of the things, I do believe this, that one of the things that has been about the resurgence of Arsenal is the way they've taken the fans with them, the way they've made everybody feel that they're part of the story, part of the success, really. And it would be, I don't think with the current people in post that will happen, but they've got to be careful that they don't just get a little bit lackadaisical, a little bit greedy, a little bit take their eye off the ball and think, there's a big waiting list, we can do whatever we want. They've got to absolutely remember that Arsenal is rooted in the hundreds of thousands that turned up to the parade. Arsenal is more than rooted, is cemented in by the 60,000 or so who turn up every week, and they must look after them. I think they will, but very quickly clubs can drift away from their roots and their ethos, and it goes wrong.
And what's the biggest opportunity you see for Arsenal over the next 5 years?
Well, win a Champions League.
Get it done.
Let's finally do that. No, the opportunity at a time when the game is commercialising more than ever is to keep growing, I hate the word, but keep growing that brand, keep growing that profile so that you have the revenue streams that you can invest in making the club and the club in the round, the men's team, the women's team, the representative teams, as strong as possible. And Arsenal have real advantages. I mean, it is a huge advantage to be located in North London. Yes. It's really hard to do it when you're Villa Park and you're hemmed in by the housing there, and you probably can't have the same level of hospitality offering or ticket prices because of the local fan base. So Arsenal have some huge opportunities. Let's hope they maximise it.
Love it. All right, Tim, where can people find the AST so they can sign up to become a member?
Best way is to go to arsenaltrust.org and find the membership page. So that's arsenaltrust.org online.
And I will put that in the bio. They get some great guests all throughout the year, and they get wins. They get wins, people. Tim, thank you very much for joining this podcast. This has become an annual piece. I absolutely love having you on the show. Definitely the most interesting man when it comes to all things Arsenal. I'll put his Twitter in the bio. Make sure you follow him and give us a 5-star review because we love those. And on that note, I'm going to turn off the loop. We're going to say ciao for now. Ciao for now. Thanks, Tim.
Thank you.